complete and total trust in Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro as she proceeds down this path. We're ready to pass a government funding bill with no drama, no partisan policy riders, and no surprises. We want to see urgent disaster aid to communities that need it, and we want to pass a defense bill that strengthens military readiness. We can do all of these things if Republicans roll up their sleeves and work with us. House Democrats are eager to extend the hand of bipartisanship today and in the new year. In the next Congress, we want to work with Republicans to cut taxes for working families and make the tax code more fair. But we're not going to be able to find common ground if the only solution that Republicans propose is to cut taxes for billionaires and big corporations that they previously cut taxes for to explode the deficit. The American people want us to work together, and that requires Republicans tuning out the most extreme voices. Republicans do not have a mandate to chase the most extreme voices in their conference. They have a mandate from the American people to work with us to make their lives better. With that, Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. The Associated Press has called California's 13th district for Adam Gray. I want to welcome Adam Gray to the House Democratic Caucus and to Congress. We will have more Democrats next term than we do have this term. So Democrats gain seats in the House of Representatives. As of right now, Donald Trump is at less than 50% of the popular vote. As Chairman Aguilar said, the Republicans do not have a mandate. The incoming president does not have a mandate. We look forward to working with the incoming administration on ideas and policies that will help the American people. But if they overreach, that is not what the American people voted for or asked for. And we urge Republicans not to overreach.
Questions? Nick?
Oh, no, sure. I wanted to ask about the president's pardon of Hunter Biden late Sunday night. Was that the right thing for him to do?
I think as a father, I understand it, and I get it. But as someone who has spent a lot of time at this podium, talking about the importance of respecting the rule of law, it's disappointing. And so we didn't have a robust conversation about this in the caucus, but those are my personal beliefs. The president gave his word and said publicly that he wasn't going to give a pardon, and then he did. So that part's disappointing. I believed him when he said he wasn't.
In this Congress with a small Republican majority, Democrats pulled Republicans out of the fire on a number of must-pass bills and major issues. An even smaller majority in a GOP trifecta. Will you guys be as inclined to do so on major things like government funding, aid bills, that sort of thing?
The substance matters. Democrats, time and time again, we will base our decisions based on what is best for the country and the communities in which we serve. That's the metric that we use, whether it's Ukraine funding or government funding. That's time and time again what the metric that we use in the room when we make these decisions. There are many Republicans who just have proven time and time again that they will not vote for a government funding bill. We know that the path forward means Democratic votes and Republican votes in order to keep this country moving. The sooner that Republicans figure that out and work with us, I think the better off that would be. And we'll be able to meet timelines and also help folks.
So one of the major things that will happen next year is a tax bill. And if Republicans are going to do big giveaways to billionaires, then no, Democrats are not going to support that. But if they want to pass tax reform that's going to help working class families, then Democrats will absolutely work with Republicans to get that done.
And just to follow up on California specifically, a couple of these late-breaking seats went to Democrats from California. What went right for Democrats in a couple seats that y'all flipped there?
I think we had some amazing candidates. I think we had some very strong candidates. So pleased, as the vice chair mentioned, to be able to welcome Adam Gray. We FaceTimed him from caucus this morning to just wake him up and tell him we appreciated him. But George Whitesides, Derek Tran, and a critical hold with Dave Min. These were candidates with amazing stories to tell. But we also built a broad-based coalition. I saw the vice chair out in these districts time and time again. We had Senator Alex Padilla, Governor Newsom, California Democratic Party, Zoe Lofgren, the dean of the California delegation, kind of leading our efforts. A high level of coordination with the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. But ultimately, these candidates and their stories is what broke through. But netting 3 seats was a very big deal for California, a point of pride with the vice chair and I, and excited to share some of those lessons learned once we dig into the data and find out a little bit more.
Congressman Wiley Nickel wrote an article in the Charlotte Observer noting that but for the extreme partisan unprecedented gerrymander in North Carolina, Democrats would have flipped the House. And if you look at what happened in this election, Democrats actually removed more Republican incumbents than vice versa. So again, the American people voted with House Democrats in a number of districts and a number of places, and the Republicans do not have a mandate. That is not what this election showed, and I hope the Republicans will work with Democrats to help the American people.
Mr. Chair.
Mia and then Cassie.
Leading off of that, though, what do you think went right in California that didn't work in other states? And I guess what do you think are the lessons, are there lessons from that can be implemented nationally?
I think we're gonna have kind of a comprehensive, deeper dive on this once we get some of the precinct level, data on what worked in some of these races. But clearly, it starts with the coordination on the political side. I think that all of these candidates felt that they had the resources that they needed to communicate their message. We were swimming against some pretty stark headwinds. But in places like California, where we believe in counting every vote and giving people, options to exercise their ability to vote with a robust vote by mail program. Those are points that were incredibly helpful. But driving a message that talked about quality of life issues, what happens in those districts, and what happened in California was those candidates did that.
Was there anything learned in 2022 that you think worked successfully this time around?
I think that, I think there were gains in New York and in California, right? 3 net in each of those states. Those were bright blue states that underperformed in 22. I think the increased turnout was absolutely a factor in both. We didn't have as robust turnout. We'll dig into the numbers, but interested in see some of the turnout numbers in some of the other states where we and districts where we came up short. But the fact that those states stepped up was a tribute to a lot of the work that happened on the other side of the house. But as the vice chair mentioned, we kind of walked into this with one hand tied behind our back with those 3 seats in North Carolina that were gerrymandered away from us. So we knew that we were walking into that 3 votes short from where we stood. We still overperformed and got the job done in those states, but we lost a few in other places. Yes.
So, at the top, you mentioned, that Democrats are willing to work with Republicans when it comes to government funding and defense. A lot of focus hasn't been put on the Farm Bill, the fact that, a lot of farmers, especially in California, are reliant on this funding. Have there been discussions about a 1-year extension of where, we are at currently as they continue to negotiate, since the Senate just sent over that copy of the bill? Can you kind of just give an update on where that stands?
Yeah, our understanding is that we're running up against the time clock here, and that is likely the most certain path is a 1-year extension. That carries forward the kind of base bill that was negotiated when Democrats were in control, so we don't have a lot of objections to it. We obviously want to provide relief to rural America and balance the farmers' interests with those on the supplemental nutrition side that are important to our members. All of it is important to our members. All the titles of this bill are important. And so seeing that we're running up against the clock, kind of carrying forward the base bill that carries forward a lot of our values seems like the best path forward. But I refer you to the committee members who know a little bit more.
But Republicans haven't approached Democratic leadership saying that they're willing to put that on the floor yet.
I've not heard a timeline to put anything on the floor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Maya Miller from the New York Times. I know that a few weeks ago you mentioned that there were going to be listening sessions with members of the caucus to kind of a post-election postmortem. What have you learned so far from those discussions, and what are the goals going forward to continue to have those conversations? What do you hope to accomplish there?
Vice Chair has been at these listening sessions as well, Democratic leadership listening to our members, not very newsworthy in that sense. We take a lot of pride in listening to our members and being accessible to our members, at all points. But these sessions have been incredibly constructive to hear directly from our members, things that they felt work, observations they had, either in their district or as they were out on the campaign trail, helping others. Things that they heard, lessons that they learned, types of communications that they felt resonated with voters, and areas where we think we have some work to do. So this has been constructive. There isn't going to be a 50-page report based on members' feedback here, but this has been incredibly helpful to us as leaders as we chart the path forward. And take, as I said, take a little bit of a deeper dive that is data-driven once we have some of the precinct level data, but just, kind of top lines, just the honesty of our members in asking and in sharing what worked has been incredibly, beneficial. All of us approach these from different pockets and different corners of the country. We visited different districts in different months, and so, sharing that perspective and hearing from folks has been incredibly helpful.
Is there an example or two that you want to highlight that stood out so far of what's worked, or
No, I'm not going to share examples of private member conversations, but the candidness of the members has been what jumped out, and sharing what happened, what they heard, the differences between the top of the ticket and our members, and how we overperformed, and some of members' feelings on why that happened has been incredibly helpful.
These listening sessions have been very helpful, and they're ongoing, but it's not as if it's just going to stop. This is a process, and Chairman Aguilar crisscross the country going to different districts, and he and I are both on the floor, and members come up to us and tell us their thoughts throughout the year. So this is an ongoing process. There was an interesting Navigator poll that came out this week that did show that Kamala Harris won among people who read the news and watch traditional news and TV channels and so on. And then she lost among those who primarily got their sources of information from social media. So last night there was a vice chair dinner where we had a discussion about how to expand outreach and presence on social media. And clearly we're in a new world where people are getting news from a lot more different sources, and we have to be able to adjust that.
Mr. Chair.
A lot of several House members received bomb threats and swatting attacks over Thanksgiving. It comes after several Trump nominees received, similar threats. Leader Jeffries called for maximum protection for members. Do you agree with that? And did member safety come up in caucus? And do you feel as though these attacks will intensify if Donald Trump, goes forward with his promises to exact retribution on his political opponents, his political enemies?
Oh, we absolutely, the vice chair and I absolutely stand by the statement that Leader Jeffries put out. Protecting members is the top priority. Members need to feel protected in order to come to work and to do the job. Huge tribute to local law enforcement agencies working with Capitol Police in order to respond to these. Some delegations faced concerns and those threats, and I thought it was handled incredibly professionally. We were texting members, just checking in on them and talking to them, but yeah, we agree with Leader Jeffries that that members need to feel protected in order to do this work. The data kind of spells this out, right? There were, I think, 800 threats to members kind of pre-Trump era. That spiked up to thousands on members. It passes prologue. That's something that we have to be prepared for. That's something that we need to work to ensure that our members know that that's coming up and know that that's in front of us. We all sign up for these jobs, with this, and I've talked about this before, these kind of twin pressures of wanting to help our country and wanting to help our community. I mean, and so we don't want anything to come in the way of doing that work. And this is a reality of public life at times, and it's something that we need to do, take every precaution imaginable. And tribute to Joe Morelli and the House Administration team for making resources available to us. Is it enough? Not always, but they're giving us more tools in order to feel safe about the work that we do.
So we've seen two Democrats now express interest in joining the DOJ caucus, saying that they want to talk about finding ways to cut government waste. Do you see an area of the government where you think the government could be more efficient and waste could be cut?
I always feel that there are efficiencies in organizations. When I helped run a city, I felt the same way with a budget that had a lot less zeros than we deal with today. Anytime you can root out inefficiencies, make things easier, reduce costs, in this case, reduce the deficit, those should be principles and ideas that Democrats embrace. We don't want people harmed in those changes, but the idea of, one, being bipartisan and working together, and two, rooting out waste and abuse is something that we're supportive of. How we go about this is the piece that the administration will guide. And so not every Democrat will sign on to those efforts because we're fearful in the way that it's going to be used. But the principle of inefficiencies and lowering the deficit is something that we should support.
I had a similar question to him, but just to go further, what kind of role do you think Democrats should play overall in that conversation? And then more broadly, if you don't think that you all should be engaged directly on this matter, what are some alternatives to trying to get the debt under control?
We'll see what this, there's two separate things, right? I mean, the question was about this kind of DOJ caucus that is potentially congressional members. There's a lot of caucuses around here, and many of them are bipartisan. The specific efforts that the incoming administration has highlighted, I don't know if those will be bipartisan. We don't know what structure that will take. That will be more formal kind of committee process. And so we'll see. The question is, we don't know. But the principle and the idea of efficiencies in government is something that we should be supporting where there are inefficiencies. And so that's a principle that we will continue to carry it, and we'll see how the year unfolds. Chad?
Good morning, thank you. Found out, obviously, come into January, it's going to be 217 to 215 around here. Obviously, it's going to be incumbent upon Republicans to get their people here, but you guys could throw a lot of wrenches into some of their bold plans by having every single one of your members here. Can you describe what this is going to be like? Are you going to take attendance? I mean, is it going to be an enhanced whip effort? Are you going to say, hey, don't go to your son's graduation? I mean, what types of things are you guys going to have to do to make sure you get everybody here on each of those votes to make it hard for the other side?
It's important for every member to come to work and to do their job. That's what we're telling our caucus. Their attendance is incredibly important, and the work that we do here is important. Pushing back against Republican overreach is potentially something that we have to do next year, and in order to do that, we're going to need them. We're going to need them coming. So life happens, emergencies happen. We absolutely get it, but there are things that we can control as members, and appointments and things on the personal side, and we need to look at the House calendar when we do those.
Are you worried about some of the health? I mean, obviously, Mr. Scott, Mr. Grijalva lost chunks of time this past year because of health issues. I mean, again, that's life, again, sometimes that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's life, but members also ran for these jobs. Members ran for these jobs and were reelected, knowing that was what they were experiencing. And if they asked their voters to send them to DC to do work, my expectation is that they're going to come to DC to do work. That's how I approach it. In the back.
We're seeing a lot of Democrats challenging current ranking members or going for open seats on these committees to be the top Democrat. What are you thinking? What are these conversations like in caucus about these generational changes, and about all of these people challenging current members?
We're here, the vice chair and I are here, and we continue with Leader Jeffries and with Clark. You know, we stand on the shoulders of Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn, and the prior leadership team as well, so we know a little bit about this topic. We respect our members and the work that they put in at the committee level. The caucus will guide these kind of discussions, steering and policy first, and then the caucus ultimately. The vice chair and I won't comment on specific races because we're likely going to be presiding over these races as well. So, but we are in touch with all of our members, hearing them out, and we're confident that in this time, it's going to take a Democratic caucus who is firing on all cylinders to push back against extremism and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to carry forward the bipartisan principles that we've talked about, and that we lower costs for the American public. That's what this is going to be about, and we want to make sure that the right voices, the caucus wants to make sure that the right folks are leading these committees, and I'm confident that we're gonna get it right, whatever the result ends up being.
Last question.
Thank you so much. There is, we can call it another challenge already for Democrats, because last week, current administration requested to attach to upcoming CR additional aid to Ukraine, $24 billion. And just 30 minutes ago, Speaker Johnson told me he's not planning to do that until new administration will come. What is the strategy and the plan of Democrats to bring on the floor additional aid to Ukraine?
Democrats have overwhelmingly supported Ukraine, and will continue to support Ukraine to fight Russian aggression. I saw those comments for the first time as we were walking in here, so that's a question on the calendar and what comes up. But Speaker Johnson is clear that he wants to wait for the incoming administration. He wants to take his orders from the incoming administration when it comes to Ukraine funding. If that's a decision, then that's a decision. But Democrats will continue to support our allies when these votes come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I put my head in the board.
I also got in a question,
On the same wavelength. Good to see you.
See you.